Okay folks, in this lecture I'm going to show you how to use Microsoft Excel's spell check feature. Now this basically can be used to correct any types of words that you've got in your document. So I've got a couple of examples and let's take a look and see how it works. Now to access the spell check feature, you basically have to go to this tab here, Review, and then this bit here, Spelling, which is under the Proofing section. So these words here, you can see that basically they do need some sort of correction. So we're going to use the spelling feature and correct these words. Now, if I click here, you'll get this dialog box which basically says, do you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet? Now, what this is basically saying is it's checked our selected cell, it's found that it's okay, and it's then asking you, do you want to correct the rest of the sheet? As in, do you actually want to scan the rest of the sheet and see if there's anything that needs correcting? So I'm going to click yes. Now, what Excel does is that it basically will cycle through each entry, and this dialog box basically is the box that you use to enact any correction if you deem fit. So in this case, it's picked up this word, hello K. Now, we don't want the K in this, it was just a mistype, so Excel has quite wisely picked up on that in terms of suggestions. It's given us hello, hellos, and a couple of other words. Now, we want this one to basically be our corrected version. So you can do two things. You can double click on this here, and it will change the spelling accordingly. You can click here, change, or you can click here, change all. Now what change all does is basically it will look for any other word which is spelt like this and automatically correct it all at once. Now the benefit of this is that if you know for certain you want to correct all variances of this word, you can click this. The downside is, however, is that you won't be able to see all the other iterations of that word on the sheet. Excel won't show you where they are, it will just correct them all and display a dialog box telling you how many replacements were made. If you click change, then it will cycle through each word, even if the same word is repeated twice, and it will ask you to manually basically correct it. Now, this option here, ignore once, basically means that, let's say you don't want it corrected. If you hit this button here, it will simply move on to the next item it needs to correct. And again, if you have the same item, Excel will still prompt you to basically action it. Now, if you don't want to keep doing that, you can select here, ignore all. This basically will ignore all variations of this word here. So you won't have to basically manually correct, or manually action, I should say, each one. Now, let's say this spelling is actually what you do want, and you don't want Microsoft Excel to keep flagging it up. So in that case, you hit this button here, Add to Dictionary. And what it will do is it will add this word to your dictionary so that it won't flag it up as a misspelt word. Finally, we've got this option here, autocorrect, and this basically means that if you type this word like that, when you press enter after you type that word, Excel will basically autocorrect it to whatever suggestion you got here. So it can be handy, folks, if, for example, you continuously make the same sort of spelling and you want it to be corrected automatically. And the benefit of that, of course, is when you do your spell check, it won't flag up. Okay, so I'm going to select this option here, change all. Now watch what happens to this one here, folks. You see that? It's corrected it both. Okay, now the next word we've got, again, Excel will also pick up words that are typically not typed correctly in terms of their characters. So in this case, we've got a capital O here and a capital D. Now Excel quite wisely has picked that up and has given us the suggestion of good. So what I'm going to do is, instead of clicking change, I'm just going to double click on this just to show you the other method I talked about in terms of replacing the word. There. And as you can see, our spell check is done. We get our dialog box, which is basically informing that we are good to go. Now I'm going to press OK. Alright, now have you noticed anything different here? Well, this word didn't get flagged up. Excel actually bypassed it. Now why is that? Well, if we go back into spelling, you can see even here, our dialog box is saying, do you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet? So Excel has basically okayed this and is now asking us, do you want to check the rest of the sheet? So there must be something in the spell check which is basically saying ignore something with, in this case, a number in it. And I say number because in our previous example, we had a capital D as well. And here we've got a capital D, but Excel still flagged this word up, but it ignored this one. So let's just go on the theory there that this number is basically telling Excel, don't check this word. Right. Now, what I'm going to do is just mistype this word, just so that I can quickly bring up the dialog box for the spell check. Right. Okay. Now, just ignore this bit, folks, because we know that's misspelt deliberately, and we're going to correct that. But I'm just going to show you why this option here did not get flagged up by Microsoft Excel. Now, in our dialog box, if you go to Options, under Proofing, you've got various options that Excel uses when it actually does spell check. And it's got a couple of ticks here. The first one says ignore words in uppercase. The second, ignore words that contain numbers. Now, this is exactly the reason why this one got ignored, because we have this ticked. We've also got a couple of other ones, ignore internet and file addresses, and a tick here to say flag repeated words. So this is the reason why Excel behaves the way it does in terms of proofing. A lot of it's to do with these options here. Now, what I tend to do is basically have these ones ticked. And the reason being is because sometimes when you do titles, some people do type in uppercase. Also, words which contain numbers can sometimes be reference numbers. So often when you've got data and you've got a unique ID, it's often a combination of letters and numbers. So you wouldn't want the spell check always continuously picking that up. The next one, ignore internet and file addresses. Well, again, sometimes if you have file URLs in your document, they can be quite long and often not make sense depending on where you're linking to and from. So we've told Excel here, ignore it. The next one, flag repeated words, well, that's a good one as well, because that basically means that when you're typing, if you type the same word twice, Excel will tell you you've typed the same word twice, and it will flag it up, and with the intention that basically you made a mistake typing the same word twice. In other words, delete one of those words. Okay, so we've now seen why this word here was ignored, basically. So I'm going to click cancel. Now, what I'm going to do is just quickly show you how the autocorrect feature works. So in this case, we've got hello F, and we've got the suggestion of hello. So if I click here, autocorrect, you can see Excel's corrected the word, and let's test if it works. So if I type in hello F again, if I press enter, you can see that Excel corrected it because it added that mistype and the correction to its autocorrect dictionary. So you can see, folks, the autocorrect function is actually quite handy if you continuously type the same type of misspelt word and you want it corrected. Okay, so that concludes this lecture. We have seen how we can use Excel's spell check feature. We've also highlighted the use of autocorrect, and we've also seen some of the options that Excel's spelling feature has in terms of when it scans for words, what it flags up and what it doesn't flag up. Now, if there are any questions or queries, please feel free to reach out, and I will see you in the next lecture.